Whispers. Sometimes it's just a whisper, a faint doubt between thoughts. Before diving into blank pages, the pen stains the wordless paper. Until the murmur spreads like weeds, the voices grow louder, and I smaller. Nothing I do is good enough. I am not enough, mediocre at best. Even if you tell me otherwise, they say some people are just too nice. I hear nothing else outside my mind. The space between lines was better off barren. Welcome to the Memento Mori Lab podcast. I'm Myra, your host and aspiring creative friend. Do you ever find yourself listening to these inner monologues about all the things you're doing wrong? Or all the things you could be doing but aren't because you're lazy? Or even this voice that sounds like a broken record saying you are not good enough? If you are anything like me, then the answer would be yes to all of the above. If this were a 90s ad, I would now tell you about this great, expensive solution that doesn't work. Maybe solutions are overrated, and sometimes just questioning things is helpful enough. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's talk about these voices that most people hear throughout their day, or at least I think they do. I sure do, all day long. Especially when I'm trying to work on something related to creativity. We each have our version of these voices. Maybe we call them different things like inner critics, self-saboteur, the censor, the oppressor, I don't know, whatever else. Here is how it usually goes. We decide to do something creative we really want to do, such as writing. So we sit at our desks and turn on our computers on a Word doc. As we are about to write, the chatter in our minds begins. Here is a poem about the silence I was hoping to hear, instead of what I actually hear. Silence. I thought I'd discover the silence underneath deafening punk rock, ringing phones, talking people, clashing pens, and washing machines when it all died down. The house went quiet. It was time to meet silence. Maybe I'd finally hear my voice, or hear nothing besides my breath. But my mind flooded the rooms with screaming voices that weren't mine. In my case, the first voice that comes up is this sort of carpe diem nihilist persona, listing all these other fun activities I could be doing right now instead of wasting my time on this story that no one wants to hear or read. We'll die soon, and here you are wasting our time. She goes on for a while, trying her best to save me from myself and just kill my dreams once and for all, so that I can do nothing all day. Then I start writing. Or I try to start writing, and here come the writing authorities telling me the words I chose suck. I can't spell, I can't do anything right. They usually say some variation of, quote, "Who the fuck do you think you are to write anything other than your grocery list?" Which, by the way, you never get right. End quote. If I actually write something, a terrified voice comes up. Are you sure you want to write that? What will people think? I'm scared of people hating this and hating you and abandoning you forever. We will die alone. There's also the general who belittles me at every chance he gets. His go-to is that I am not good enough. And whenever I get distracted, he tells me I don't have what it takes and maybe I don't want this enough. I should just give up right now. Not to mention all the other voices that keep telling me there's work around the house to be done and that by taking time to do this, I'm not a good wife, I'm not a good daughter, friend, or you name it. And then if I do create something, if people say they liked what I did, the voices come back up telling me people are just being nice or that they pity me. The voices are many. And at first I thought about not doing this episode at all because sounds like I've lost it completely. Maybe I have, but it also sounds so mean, doesn't it? The more I think about it, the more I sense that it's a universal thing, part of the human experience. I hope your inner critics are a bit nicer, but I doubt it. We've all internalized these voices throughout our lives, perhaps from parents, teachers, friends, random people online, or even perceptions from our childhood. Regardless of how they came about, the fact is that they get in the way of our work. They stop us from doing what we want to do and leave us feeling like shit. If we manage to start the creative work, they criticize us all the way through, hoping we won't get to the finish line. Sometimes we beat them and we actually get the work done. Other times we give in and toss the project aside. That is, if we even manage to start the project in the first place, right? Because sometimes they get the best of us before the start. We have an idea and here come the voices. That's not very original, is it? That has been done 1,000 times by people way better than you. You can't even get good ideas. Just quit now while you haven't embarrassed yourself yet. When I read Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott, a book about writing, I was surprised to find out that she experiences these same angry voices in her head when she starts writing. I mean, she's a professional and yet struggles with the same things I do. I wasn't happy that she goes through it, but I felt less insane, I felt less alone. And this is why I decided to make this episode after all. Maybe you get to feel less alone too. I guess most people don't want to talk about or even acknowledge these inner critics. It's easier to pretend we're not struggling. This episode is an excellent follow-up to the previous one about fears because it's all related. Don't worry though if you haven't listened to that episode. If something doesn't make sense during this episode, it's just because it didn't make sense, not because you missed out on anything, okay? Anyway, in part, these voices are one of the ways we found to express our fears. The more we try to shut them down, the louder they get, until they get so loud that we hear nothing else. So we stop trying to do whatever it is that's triggering these voices in the first place. I really don't want to do that when it comes to my creativity, and you shouldn't either. We cannot let them win. But what can we do about these inner critics to make sure we keep doing our work? Well, turns out there are some possible solutions. Maybe. This podcast is usually more about questioning problems, hoping that each of us finds our own answers. But in this case, I did bring some suggestions. The first thing that helps me is realizing that these voices aren't really me. I'm the one who hears them. I'm the one who knocks. Usually, our inner critics are other people's voices that we've internalized during our upbringing. Maybe the comments or remarks weren't even directed at us, but we still internalize them as our own thoughts, our compass. Maybe figuring out who these voices are can be helpful. Other times, the inner critics were formed by many external influences, like Dr. Frankenstein's monster, stitched together over years of hearing things here and there. I love the video created by Struthless on YouTube, which I will link in the description. Apart from also quoting Anne Lamott, he talks about personifying our inner critics. He draws his critics as characters and talks about the thoughts that come to mind regarding each character. Personifying these voices makes it a lot easier to deal with them so that we aren't dealing with invisible monsters like the fears we talked about in the previous episode. It makes things easier to grasp. When we know who these voices are, we can gently tell them it's not their turn to speak. They have to wait. We can also take it further and go through a full imaginative exercise that Anne Lamott talks about in her book. So she told a hypnotist about the inner criticism she would hear before writing her first drafts. And here is what he told her to do. I'm going to read a paragraph from her book. Quote, "Close your eyes and get quiet for a minute until the chatter starts up. Then isolate one of the voices and imagine the person speaking as a mouse. Pick it up by the tail and drop it into a mason jar. Then isolate another voice, pick it up by the tail and drop it in the jar. And so on. Drop in any high-maintenance parent unit. Drop in any contractor, lawyers, colleagues, children, anyone who's whining in your head. Then put the lid on. And watch all these mouse people clawing at the glass, jabbering away, trying to make you feel like shit because you won't do what they want. Won't give them more money, won't be more successful, won't see them as often. Then imagine that there's a volume control button on the bottle. Turn it all the way up for a minute and listen to the stream of angry, neglected, guilty-mongering voices. Then turn it all the way down and watch the frantic mice lunge at the glass trying to get to you. Leave it down and get back to your shitty first draft." End quote. By the way, Struthless in the video I mentioned earlier has a cute animation with the mice. Some of these voices echoing attacks in the back of our minds think they are protecting us like most of our fears do. They want to protect us from pain, but in the end, the regret of not doing the creative work we want to do will be more painful than any pain they can predict. The thing is, for us, it's much easier to protect ourselves from a potential immediate pain than a future certain one, like the pain of regret. And at the time of this recording, there aren't any public time machines. So when regret hits, it might be too late for us. Here is a little writing about this so-called protection. Voices. I hear them loud and clear, no matter how noisy life gets. I hear them quietly screaming at me, like the phantom of the opera inside my mind. Will they ever have anything nice to say? Or neutral? I'd go for neutral. But all they do is belittle me, for my own good. They tell me how pathetic I am, how pitiful and dumb and lost and useless. What good is that anyway? How is that meant to help exactly? Thanks for sharing. You've said enough. Changing the way we talk to ourselves and how we let these voices speak to us can be life-changing, really. Think about everything you tell yourself when you make a mistake, Would you ever say anything like that to a friend who was trying their best and you wanted to encourage them to continue trying? I'm pretty sure you wouldn't. I know I wouldn't. We think we can take it. We believe that being a perfectionist and being hypercritical of our work will make us better somehow. But more often than not, let's be honest, it just crushes our dreams and our self-confidence and our will to do anything at all. What are some of the voices you hear? Tell me about your worst inner critics. The worst one for me is the general screaming in my ear that I am not good enough. But he is in the mason jar right now, so it's all good. Hit me up on Instagram at memento.mori.lab and let's talk about these voices. I hope this episode brought you some value. Can't wait to see you around here again next week. There's a new episode coming out every week, so make sure you subscribe to get notified. Thanks for hanging around till the end. See ya!